I never thought of myself as a cheater. The word felt ugly, like a stain that wouldn't wash out, no matter how hard you scrubbed. But as I sit here now, my skin still tingling from the memory of his touch, I realize I've crossed a line I never thought I would. I want to tell you how it happened, not to justify it, but because the truth deserves to be told. It began 6 months ago, on an ordinary Tuesday. My husband, Aaron, had left for work early, as usual. He always kissed me goodbye, his lips brushing my cheek, like a whisper of something long forgotten. We'd been married for 7 years, and somewhere along the way, we had settled into a rhythm that felt more like coexistence than partnership. He was reliable, predictable, and kind. I loved him, but the fire that had once consumed us had long since turned to embers. I wasn't looking for trouble when I walked into the coffee shop that morning. I was just looking for caffeine. But trouble has a way of finding you when you least expect it. He was sitting by the window, a book in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as though he'd just rolled out of bed, and his eyes, deep and stormy, met mine for a fraction of a second. It was long enough to send a shiver down my spine. I don't know why I sat at the table next to his. Maybe it was the way the sunlight caught his profile, or maybe it was the way my heart quickened at the thought of proximity. Whatever the reason, I sat there pretending to read emails on my phone while stealing glances at him. "Good book?" His voice was smooth, like velvet dipped in honey. I looked up, startled. "Excuse me." He held up his book, a worn paperback with a cracked spine. "I saw you looking. Thought you might be a fan of Murakami." I smiled, a little embarrassed. "I wasn't looking at the book." His eyebrows lifted slightly, and a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "Fair enough. I'm Daniel." "Rachel," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We talked for over an hour that day, about books, movies, the little things that make life bearable. He had a way of drawing me in, of making me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. When I finally left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside me. The next few weeks were a blur of routine, but my thoughts often wandered back to Daniel. I told myself it was harmless, just a fleeting moment of connection with a stranger. But when I found myself back at that same coffee shop the following Tuesday, I knew I was lying to myself. He was there again, sitting in the same spot by the window. When he saw me, his lips curved into that slow, devastating smile. "Rachel," he said, as though he'd been expecting me. From that day on, it became a ritual. Every Tuesday morning, we'd meet at the coffee shop. We talked about everything and nothing, our conversations growing deeper with each passing week. I learned that he was an artist, a painter who lived in a loft downtown. He told me about his work, his struggles, his dreams. In return, I told him about my life, though I carefully avoided mentioning Aaron. I didn't plan to let it go further than that. I told myself it was just coffee, just conversation. But the truth was, I craved Daniel in a way that scared me. The first time he touched me, it was almost accidental. We were standing in line for coffee, and his hand brushed mine. The contact was electric, sending a jolt of heat through my body. I looked up at him, and the way he was looking at me, intense, unguarded, made my breath catch. "Come with me," he said softly. I hesitated, my heart pounding. "Where?" "My studio. I want to show you something." I should have said no. Every rational part of me screamed to walk away, but I didn't. I followed him out of the coffee shop, down the bustling streets, and into his world. His loft was a chaotic symphony of color and light. Canvases leaned against the walls, their surfaces alive with bold, sweeping strokes. The air smelled faintly of turpentine and something else, something intoxicating. "This is where I lose myself," he said, gesturing to the room. "It's beautiful," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was talking about the space or the man standing before me. He stepped closer, his gaze locking onto mine. "You're beautiful." I didn't resist when he reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of my jaw. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, and when he kissed me, it was like the world fell away. The first time we made love, it was on a paint-splattered drop cloth in the middle of his studio. It was raw and messy and utterly consuming. For the first time in years, I felt alive, like every nerve in my body had been set on fire. But the guilt hit me almost immediately. As I lay tangled in Daniel's arms, the reality of what I'd done crashed down on me. I had betrayed Aaron, the man who had stood by me through everything. "I should go," I said, sitting up and reaching for my clothes. Daniel propped himself up on one elbow, his expression unreadable. "Rachel, stay." "I can't," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. This was a mistake. He didn't argue, but the look in his eyes as I walked out the door haunted me. I tried to end it. I really did. I stopped going to the coffee shop, ignored Daniel's texts, and threw myself into my marriage. I cooked Aaron's favorite meals, planned date nights, and even suggested a weekend getaway. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. One night, as Aaron slept beside me, I found myself scrolling through the photos on my phone. There was one of Daniel, a candid shot I'd taken in the coffee shop. His eyes seemed to bore into me, as if he knew all my secrets. Before I could stop myself, I sent him a message. "I can't stop thinking about you." His reply came almost instantly. "Come to me." I didn't even hesitate. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my keys, and drove to his loft. When he opened the door, he didn't say a word. He just pulled me inside and kissed me like his life depended on it. For weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was Aaron's devoted wife. By night, I was Daniel's lover. The guilt was a constant ache, but the pull of Daniel was too strong to resist. He made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. Passion, desire, freedom. But secrets have a way of unraveling, no matter how carefully you try to keep them. It was a Thursday evening when everything came crashing down. Aaron had left work early to surprise me. When I walked through the door, his face was pale, his eyes filled with a pain I'd never seen before. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice trembling. My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Rachel. I found the messages." I didn't even try to deny it. The truth was written all over my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I never meant to hurt you." He didn't say anything else. He just grabbed his keys and walked out the door. It's been 3 months since that night. Aaron and I are separated now, and I haven't seen Daniel since. Some nights I lie awake, wondering if I made the right choices. I don't regret loving Daniel, but I regret the way I let it consume me, the way I let it destroy the life I'd built. Infidelity isn't black and white. It's a tangle of emotions, love and lust, guilt and longing, joy and pain. I don't know if I'll ever untangle it all, but I do know one thing. I'll never be the same.